My name is Caiana Moise, and I wanted to welcome and thank everyone for coming to the Comics as Therapy Healthy Habits for Artists panel at the 4th Annual Boston Comics in Color Festival. In case you are new to Comics in Color, let me just share a few things. BCICF is New England's only comic arts festival that's focused on stories by and about people of color. And April 2025 will mark the 5th year anniversary of this little baby organization. We're going to become grown next year. BCICF is also a family-friendly event, and there's always something for everyone. And I'm not sure if this is happening, but there was supposed to be live graffiti at the front. Did anybody see any live graffiti happening at the front of the building? No. So scratch that. It didn't happen. And then also you can go beyond and look at the Artist Alley where they sell books and artwork and more. And you do not want to miss the cosplay contest. I saw some really awesome costumes. I saw, let's see, Wolverine. I believe I saw some Demon Slayer costumes as well. So, there's going to be a judgment happening, I believe, after this panel in the next hour. So before I introduce the panel, I want to remind everyone to please donate to our festival if you can. Your support helps keep this event free for everyone and celebrates stories by and for and about people of color. If you take any pictures here and you're posting on Instagram, please use the hashtag BCICF2024. And also, if you could please silence your cell phones, we can get started. So, about this panel really quickly. Art is an incredible tool for assisting with mental health. And it can be an outlet to release some of the issues that we all may be holding. But it can also be overwhelming and difficult, especially when you're trying to balance your work or 9 to 5 with your art, and you're also doing your art to possibly support yourself, and your livelihood. So we've gathered this panel of fabulous artists to speak on what kind of tools they use in their lives to balance between work, artistic, proactive family, and of course, self-care. So first on the panel, we have Zahirah Truth. I'm going to give everybody a chance to give a little bit of an intro for themselves. So we can start with Zahirah.
Hey y'all, peace. I am Zahirah Truth. I'm a Boston-based artist and arts educator. And so the question was, what kind of art do you do? I do a little bit of everything except sing and dance. Maybe later on down the road I'll do that. I've been known to write a poem or two. Mostly my art is focused in the visual arts, painting, drawing, digital. I also do some textile art as well.
And then we have the amazing Empress, TiElla Grimes. Please introduce yourself and what kind of art you do.
Awesome. So Light and Love have made amazing souls. I consider myself a spoken word alchemist, so I do spoken word poetry. I also have dibbled and dabbled with art. So if you know, Dudley Station has these amazing towers of artwork. That was done back in 2000. So I have a piece of art that was up there from age 11. So I've been kind of dipping and dabbing in different ways. I do consider myself like a doodler. I love to just doodle and just whatever comes to mind, just do things in that nature. But that is how I would just classify it. It's just like whatever calls to me in that way that I can express. I'm learning how to use different things to express.
Awesome, thank you so much. And next we have Gabriel Reid. Please share a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Gabriel, also go by Joy. I use any pronouns, and I graduated from Northeastern right down the street in media arts and screen studies, so I do a little bit of everything. I do a little bit of animation, illustration, film, writing, comics, of course, and I'm currently studying at VU in the visual narrative program, studying comics in the MFA. And yeah, so I do a little bit of everything. And I also, my first comic was about the intersection of racial justice and mental health. So a panel like this about mental health and working as artists is super cool to me, so it's hard to me.
Yeah, thank you. I also forgot to mention that Zahirah and Gabriel are returning artists as well, so they've been joining us for a few years now. And then we have the awesome Bithiah Holton. Please share a little bit about yourself and your artwork.
Yeah, so my name is Bithiah. I use she, her, they, them pronouns. And I'm an illustrator, comic artist. And a lot of my comics are based around my experiences with mental health and around my identity and experiences with my identity as a queer Black Mexican American.
Thank you all for sharing. I think so. I want to just get this question out of the way first because I think it's important for all of us to know, why is it that you do the art that you do? I know that's a big one.
I'll kick it off. My uncle Thomas Rhymes was my biggest influence. He's the actor, playwright, poet, wrote and did things. And so coming up underneath him, somewhere that got sprinkled onto me. But spoken word specifically is part of what I feel is my calling. And so being able to understand how to use word to move energy, to uplift spirit, is a very spiritual process for me. And so I feel like why I do the art that I do is because that's what God has called me to do. And I'm trying to lean more into that and making sure I'm conscious of the words that we use in a world that we say spelling, we cast spells every day, being mindful about how I use my work to uplift and inspire somebody.
With my work, earlier today, somebody came over to me and they said, oh, I know that. And I want that connection. I want people to be able to recognize things from like many timelines, from their childhood into adulthood. I want people to be able to feel seen. I also use it as an opportunity to express my own voice, or sometimes say the things out loud that other people are thinking they don't always want to say. And also, art making for me has always been a tool to help me in some like the challenging times of my life. So it's a place that I can go to that I know is always available to me.
These are such deep answers, and I'm like, I don't know. I like doodled all the time in class, and no one told me to stop. Yeah, but also like I use doodles a lot and like cartooning a lot in order to like try to better understand like stuff in class. And then I kind of realized that that's just comics. Like comics is like another medium that you can use to better understand, you know, topics that are maybe more difficult to understand with just words alone. So that, and probably also like it's like a stimming tool a little bit. Like when I was like nervous or like anxious or like really bored, like I would go straight to like pencil and paper. Like that is like my safe place. So, and we can talk more about that, but just because like it is a safe place, and then doing it for work, it's like you have to balance this thing of like, oh, making things for yourself and making things for others.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, there is something really grounding about putting pencil to paper or pen to
Yes.
paper. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, although I didn't realize it back then, I've always used art as like a way to kind of like process my emotions and like cope with whatever was going on in my life. And so I guess that's why I still do it now, and it's just a plus that when I get to share it with other people and they also relate to it, and that's like a conversation we can have together. And that's like why I keep doing what I do, I guess, and sharing it publicly.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we all have our own kind of like reasons why we do art, right? And a lot of the time, like the way that the art is perceived sometimes is not exactly like reflective of why it is that we're doing it, right? So that actually segues really perfectly into our next question. What are some challenges that you've had in being an artist, in creating your art, and just being an artist of color in general?
I can speak to that a little bit. A few months ago, I had somebody tell me that my art was too black, and I was like, I am black. What do you mean? So it's like I don't know how to separate that. And if you're looking for artists of color or black people to like separate their identity from their artwork, I think it's like that is a challenge, right? And so for me, I don't do that, but maybe there are folks who might struggle with that, you know. So that's been like something that I've actually started to experience a lot more lately, which I think is odd.
It is very odd.
I think for my industry, for like the animation and cartooning industry, I think it's getting a lot better now. Like people are going out there and searching for stories by and about people of color, featuring people of color. But like there's still kind of this underlying thing, and historically this underlying thing of like if it is black or if it is like about people who aren't represented on screen as much, it's not going to be as like palatable or like monetizable, you know what I mean? So it's like still kind of like this underlying thing of just like, oh, this might not be as marketable, you know, if it's like a black lead. So I think that's definitely like kind of related. Like,
No, that's
yeah.
You said what I was trying to say.
Yeah, no, yeah, but definitely related to that.
Who cares?
I know that.
All right,
exactly.
right, exactly. That's what we're all here for. That's like literally the purpose of this entire festival today. So, yeah.
I think for me, it's although I agree with a lot of these things, I think another challenge for me is like imposter syndrome. Like just from my experiences, like recently, I've only started like publicly sharing my comics and tabling, and a lot of the times I don't see a lot of people who look like me at these events, and also the work that they're sharing with other people don't have, you know, it's not featuring POC characters and experiences, so I almost feel like out of place and like I don't belong. It's something I'm still working on, even though I've had like, I'd say I have more experience now tabling, but I feel like it'll always be an issue while, you know, that's not being balanced.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Ooh, thank you for the imposter syndrome. I think for me in writing, a biggest challenge has been my reformed people pleaser. Writing to have something to please an audience or not be judged or fear of saying something a certain way. Some of the work that I've started doing over the last year has been completely different than I've ever performed before. And definitely could perform a Black Power piece, of course. Like that's not, but when we're starting to talk about intergenerational trauma, when you're starting to talk about unpacking your identity and who you are, there's things and layers that have came up in my writing that I'm like, oh, I don't want to trigger someone, or I don't want to make someone feel a certain way. I don't want to be that one. But now I'm in a space and understanding like, that's the challenge. The challenge is to be able to say the things that have been like survivor mode type of things. And it's like, no, we're talking about in order to like, intention is one thing, but a lot of my pieces now, let's unpack impact. Let's understand how we have made sense of ourselves through these lines of images and different stories and expectations. So how do I convey that in my work? So that's like the double-edged sword of the challenge of being able to speak my truth, but also being able to just be mindful. Like there's still a humanity piece to me. I'm not trying to cause harm, but I am trying to express the deepest things that I battle with on the inside, like anybody would battle with, but we don't say on externally. And as you said, like giving someone of like, you might say something that might inspire someone to be like, oh my gosh, I felt that way for however long, and you just said it in one line, you know, so that's been the challenge.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing up like the reformed people pleaser aspect of it, right? That just actually made me think of the other day. If you know me, I am a musician, and I was recording a song the other day, and I like turned to my producer, or the producer, shouts out to Billy Dean, if you guys know them, and I was like, oh, like that? And they were like, don't sing it in a way that I'm expecting you to sing it, right? Like do it how you want to do it, right? Which is the purpose of the arts here. But I was over here like trying to be like, hey, is that what you were thinking about? Even though it's my song, which like, that's kind of crazy. But that is my reformed people pleaser kind of showing out there. And then back to the imposter syndrome, which I think is a huge mental health kind of like, it's in the mental health realm there, right? Because all of us living in America here are dealing with a sense of imposter syndrome, maybe a little bit of Stockholm mixed in there. But I want to know that you as artists, how have you been able to move past that imposter syndrome and be able to put yourself out there for everyone to see? We all want to know.
I'm gonna start because can I be frank? I think like the idea of imposter syndrome is always there, right? And so I think about when I used to do performance, rest in peace to Daniel Abrams. She said, nobody knows you're fucking up on stage but you. And that's how you get through the imposter syndrome, right? Because it's really about you judging yourself, like whatever that internal conversation is. And nobody knows you're having that conversation but you. So nobody knows. Like just do it, show up, whatever's gonna be is gonna be. Now that doesn't mean just all like really wing it, but like, you know, put some planning, some effort into it. But that's kind of how like I move through it. Like nobody knows but you.
Don't dwell too much on the mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the question?
How do you move past that imposter syndrome?
I think, and I have a couple of witnesses in this space, but April 8th, 2024 was a big way to move past hella imposter syndrome. I participated in Hella Black, Volume 6, Amanda Shea, shout out to my sis, put that on at BCA. And for me, I think that was, it's been a very long time since I've been on stage. It's one thing to whoo, that was different, let's just say. I think it was a breakthrough in my own artistry. So that's how I'll say, like, that's where my imposter syndrome kind of had to kick through. Because as soon as I came off that stage, I kind of had a humble moment. Shout out to fellow artists who hug you when you're crying, like, what the hell is that? Did I just do that? That's different.
And another shout out to Amanda Shea. She was downstairs. She was making announcements today as our MC. So you might have seen her.
I think a big part of it when you enter like the indie comics and animation industry is that you have to really be your own biggest fan, and think about like the artists that you look up to and like the creators that you look up to, and understand that like they're not where they are today without having to do a lot of work to get there. And if you can, I watch a lot of like YouTube animators, and one fun exercise is like going to their YouTube channel and then I guess like filtering their videos to oldest video and watch their first video and see like how far they've come. Especially if they keep all their stuff up there, you can see that like it takes a lot of work. And also just knowing that like they had to take that first step to post something to begin with, to be brave enough to post something. So you should do that too, because you know everyone has to start somewhere, kind of thing. So that really helped me recently, where I was like really like nervous about posting this one comic or being like, oh, this is bad, and then thinking like, what would happen if Rebecca Sugar, the creator of Steven Universe, didn't make her first step?
Oh, goodness.
Then I wouldn't have Steven Universe. That'd be horrible.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. And failure, I think, is something that needs to be reframed, right? We're always thinking of failure as something that's really negative, right? But I think that failure is a pathway to success. And you miss all the shots you don't take, right? So you might as well take a few.
Yeah, and if you didn't do it right, then do it better next time. And then if you didn't do that right, then do better next time.
Exactly.
Every step, just make every project, keep making stuff. It's so important.
Bithiah?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just, even though it's still something I'm figuring out, it's just continuing to put yourself out there. And I know that the work that I'm putting out is like what I'm proud of, and it's what I enjoy. And so, you know, if other people don't enjoy it, then it's just not for them. And I just try to think, well, as long as it's like making me happy and it's something that I am proud of, then, you know, just trying to ignore the other feelings, the outside feelings of like, you don't belong here, like those kind of feelings, and trying to get past it that way. But I think also just knowing that, like what you're saying, is that you got to start somewhere, and as long as you're still putting out the work, like eventually it will be a snowball effect, and you know you'll get to where you want to be.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So I know that we're going to touch a little bit again upon imposter syndrome, but something like that, it can be really overwhelming, right? And that coupled with the expectations of maybe even a 9-to-5 job, or, you know, just feeling like there needs to be a sense of perfection, right? When you're on stage or when you're presenting a piece or something like that. How do you deal with those feelings of overwhelmedness when you are performing or when you are presenting a new piece outside of imposter syndrome? So like just putting imposter syndrome aside for a moment, right? Because that's a big part of it too, but it's not everything, right? So can we name a couple of the other pieces that might make us feel overwhelmed in that sense, and then how we work through those?
I feel like with comics specifically, it's very easy to get overwhelmed because you're drawing so many pages, and it can take a really long time. And when you see like all the work that you have to do over like the next 8 to 12 to 24 months, then you're like, that can be really overwhelming. And what the best way to like go about like a big project is to like work in small little batches instead. Think of it as like, okay, just one page or just one panel, or just this amount of time. I also noticed that like when you're trying to like measure your workload by like how many pages you can create, that's a really bad way to do things. Like instead of doing that, like say like I'm literally just gonna work on this for an hour and how much I get done is how much I get done. Because you can measure that more consistently than you can like number of pages, I feel like. So I feel like breaking things up is and into smaller pieces could be like a great way to get over that overwhelm, I think, that work overwhelm. Yeah.
So for me, I wanted to do this thing where like my life was really is really embedded in art. So like you have to be careful what you ask for. With that being said, it's very overwhelming because especially if you know me, like every single weekend, every other day, morning, noon, and night, I'm doing something that's art. So a lot of people, so back in the day, right, if you were creative, you had to moonlight as an artist, right? I did a thing where it's like, okay, I'm an artist, so I'm gonna be an art teacher, right? So when I'm at work teaching the kids, I can make art with them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm serious, girl. I'll be working it out, okay? So I do that, right? And then it's like, so then there's all the other things. So like, just that's overwhelming, but it also brings me joy, right? Because I know that I'm really doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing what I love. And so when I am feeling overwhelmed, I step back, look at my calendar, be like, is there something I can cancel on here, right? Can I make a day to go for a walk with another artist friend? Because I love doing that too, right? Or can I just carve some time out to take a road trip, a day trip? Those are the things that help me not feel overwhelmed. And sometimes it looks like sometimes it also looks like doing art that just like for the process, not because I have a gallery show, not because I have something coming up. I'm just making something lighthearted and fun just for me. It doesn't even have to make sense, you know. That is really how I got into art growing up as a kid, like kind of doing those little doodles or what have you. Okay, because when you have to do stuff for like a show, that is overwhelming, it's a little stressful.
Mm-hmm. And do those lighthearted doodles, do they sometimes end up feeling like some of your best work?
They sure do.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing I'm working on and have to work through is getting out of my head and into my heart when I'm creating. Especially for me with spoken word, I definitely get in my head and like, okay, this has to sound like this has to be like this, if the structure ain't like this. But when I get into my heart, I could feel the difference of when I'm creating it, and then the overwhelm becomes like, okay, all right, you don't have to be in your head so much about crafting this and having this perfect. And some of my best work come in that way. I do want to highlight when I am overwhelmed, one of the things that I found to be helpful is to doodle what I'm overwhelmed about. So like I was feeling dissociated. I went to a trip to Costa Rica, it was beautiful, but when I came back here in America, it took a very long time to like integrate and regulate. I didn't know what that was happening, so I felt dissociated. So I started drawing. It was like you said it was like one of your best doodles. I was like, I love this doodle. I just want to see it on a t-shirt. I don't know why, but it's just like my eye over here, your ear over here, just thoughts all over the place. But then it kind of helped me just like calm down and be like, hey, I feel this way. It's okay just to be in the moment and be okay with that instead of trying to fix it or do something to get out of it instantly. So.
Yeah. Definitely, and I feel like it can be the reason why I feel like we feel like those might be some of our best work is because of the relatability and the authenticity of that, right? Because sometimes when we do art as our livelihood, the authenticity can kind of be like sucked away sometimes, right? We can become burnt out. You know, we can feel like, oh gosh, like I'm exhausted because I've said the same sentence to like 50 different people today, right? And so because we're able to be like, okay, I'm not thinking about what anybody else wants to see. I'm not even thinking about like how I'm about to frame this drawing right now. I'm just gonna do it, like you said, get out of my head and into my heart. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. For me, I actually recently started working full time. And so it's been like a process of like figuring out how to balance like work and like still doing my art. And I feel like a big part of that is just like setting boundaries and like allowing myself to take some time like after work to maybe not work on art and like take that time to just like relax and decompress and I don't know, just like being patient and taking things slow and allowing myself to have that grace because of that transition. Yeah, and I'm still figuring it out, so.
Yeah. That's a great segue into our next question. Because I think for me, starting a new job, it takes a minimum of 2 months for me to get back into my routine. Like I feel like everything stops and I'm like, I gotta focus on this job right now so I can get situated and everything is taken care of. And then I can start getting into my rhythm, right? So for those of you who are working a 9 to 5 job and then also who do other things outside of your art on the side, how do you figure out, or how long does it take you, first of all, and how do you figure out how to balance between that working for someone else necessarily and then also being able to cater to yourself and your own artistic needs?
I'm gonna answer this quick, so I'm gonna recuse myself from this. So I own my own business now, but the issue is decolonizing my mind from the 9 to 5 because it's showing up in how I'm doing my business and my art. It's a very, and then COVID happened, right?
The trauma.
And then so I'm in my house all the time, and now I don't want to go out of my house. So now it's trying to figure out okay, you're a business owner, you want to get out, you want to mingle, you want to do some art. There's so many different spaces, and I'm just not being in them necessarily. And then having your own business, it's okay, I'm looking to rebuild the structure, right? Because it's not like I have, it's a free day, I can do whatever I want because I own my business, I can just sleep in and do whatever. It's no, how do I use my time differently now? So there is a level of freedom in being able to think about how I want to plan or be intentional about how I do my art and when I do it. And it's also this challenge of decolonizing I need to do this between this and this time, and then this and this and this time, and if I don't do it in this and this time, and then you build and then you fill your schedule up to you have no space. So that's where I'm the balance is trying to figure that out.
It's that
Work in progress.
PTSD where I see is post-traumatic systems disorder.
That's good. That's so good.
So speaking of systems, I'm the queen of my calendar, and I have a calendar. I'm also a single mom, so my son has a calendar too, and he's like, "Oh, we both busy." But I'm a task-oriented person, so that checklist, that calendar really, really helps me. And if I don't have it on there, it doesn't exist and it doesn't get done. So when it comes to art making in particular, the past few weeks I've been focused on new work, and I'm usually okay, on this Monday and Wednesday I'm gonna give myself an hour, right? But sometimes that hour comes and you're exhausted. I'm I'm taking a nap. I'm gonna come back to it later because you can't create from an empty cup. You can't create from a place where you're not rested. So me, I will yes, I will build in time to have rest, but I feel if I was supposed to do something and rest is coming up more, it's okay, let me do that. And then I'm in a better place to create. And so if you know me, if I try to create something and I'm not well rested, it's ugly. Somebody else might like it, but I do not like it. It does not look that great. But just kind of, for me, it's the calendars, being task oriented, making sure I'm planning in time for rest and taking extra rest if I need it to get the stuff done. Yeah.
I relate to that as well.
I don't have a 9 to 5 right now because I'm a full-time student.
Okay.
But
That's a 9 to 5.
That is-
But that's not what we're. Yeah, that's really what it is. Is that what I've noticed being a full-time student for 6 years is that I'm drawing for most of my classes. I'm drawing for freelance work, so if I'm doing extra work for people or just making some money on the side, that's drawing. And then I'm drawing for fun. And then I realized maybe about a year-ish ago, I had a bunch of wrist pain and pain in my fingers, and went to a doctor and they told me, yeah, you have some symptoms for carpal tunnel, so you're gonna want to lay off that hand. And he said something about that's how he described it. He said, your hand is very strong. But if I'm tapping on your kneecap over and over again, you're not going to feel anything. But if I tap on it for months, then you're really gonna start to feel something. That's what you did to your hand. So what I had to do was like find like other things to do that weren't drawing related, to take breaks. So like I will like go. I learned how to skate. Like I learned how to roller skate recently, which has been really fun. I watch movies and TV shows to like take a break. I hang out with my friends. I like read a lot of books, stuff like that. So you gotta find like other things to do, especially if you're gonna make like art your full-time thing, because that can get you burnt out or get your hand really hurt. Yeah, things like that. So it's very important.
Right, taking breaks and rest. Yeah, for sure.
For me, I feel like I have to be very structured in my free time. Like free time meaning like work outside of my 9 to 5. Especially because I feel like I'm very ambitious with the work I want to put out, and I have a lot of ideas, but I just don't have the time all the time, and I don't have the energy all the time. So I have to take it very slow and make very achievable goals and deadlines for myself. For example, like if I feel like I want to write a mini comic by maybe by like a certain like comic expo, then I make sure that I'm being very reasonable with the deadlines I'm putting for myself and what I'm signing myself up for between now and then, just so that I'm not overexerting myself and just so that I'm being like true to myself too, and you know, not taking like not suddenly like, oh my gosh, like feeling overwhelmed, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I feel like just like being very structured in that time and trying to stick to achievable deadlines for myself helps a lot.
Yeah, that's so important. For real. I am also connected to my calendar at the hip. Like if it's not in there, it doesn't exist. Like you said, and it's not gonna happen. And if you are my friend, you already know I will send you calendar invitations for things. You know, so you have it on your calendar, even if you're not a calendar person. But that's also another great way to segue into our next question, which is, right, burnout happens, right? Overwhelmedness in your work happens as well. You have already talked about some of the tools that you use, like doodling or writing lists or using your calendars. But what are some other ways that, well, let's say, when you've reached burnout, it's too late, right? It's already too late. You're already burnt out. So what are some ways that you keep yourself from getting to that point of no return in terms of burnout? So, you know, there's so many trials in lives. What are some techniques that you use to regulate yourself before you get to the point of burnout?
Happy 420.
Yes, it is a holiday, y'all.
So one thing that, outside of, well, everything is an encompass of me, but I'm also a spiritual transformational coach. And so I've created a framework called the Healing Framework, and it's honoring emotions, aligning in love energy. It's just 6 things to just in the moment, anything that's happening before burnout, in burnout, whatever. But being able to, one, anchor yourself, and that's just giving yourself some stillness. I think we are such accumulated to going, trying to, and not listening to our bodies, the sensations, what is happening. So if I just give myself a moment to anchor in breath, I could just meet myself where I'm at in this moment. After I do that, just to become aware. What is actually happening? Where am I feeling that? Do I feel tightness in my throat? Is my hand sweaty? Is my heart beating fast? Just getting to understand where I'm at in the moment, because my head is gonna have me thinking of all the things externally and how I need to do everything, but I'm not gonna give myself the moment just to be. After I do that, kind of assess, like, what is that telling me? I'm angry, I'm tired, I'm hungry, a boundary's been violated. Like, there's something there, but just the opportunity to meet myself is everything. Then I just accept what's in my control. That's a big one, because there's a lot of things I don't approve of. So the external things that could be happening outside of me, I don't approve of it. You know, I don't approve of somebody disrespecting me or whatever. But I accept that this is happening in the moment, and I can do what I need to do for myself in that, and then I adjust. So whatever that is, it's adjusting my perspective. I've been working really hard to see that, I try to be like humanity, we mirroring each other. So if I see something I like, yay, love it. If I see something I'm not really vibing with, there's a gift and an opportunity there. Let me try to figure out what that is. And it doesn't mean I have to approve. The word approve is not in this at all, right? Accept, adjust, And then once I adjust and I kind of like got myself to a place of like, all right, I'm feeling uneasy. I'm not, my throat hurt. I need some water. Matter of fact, I need to go for a walk. I need to call a friend. Like, it gives me some sense of understanding what I need in the moment so I can give myself what I need because nobody else is going to give it to you. And then you act on that. And however the chips fall, that's where the chips fall. I don't control nobody else's response and reaction. I can only control what I can do for myself in that moment so I don't burn out, get stressed, get anxious, or have the angry black woman stereotype thrown at me when I'm actually really angry and I need a space to kind of like give myself the space to process. So that's kind of what I do. Those 6 steps is to just give myself that moment to check in with how I am doing, because I don't think we do enough of taking the opportunity to meet ourselves where we're at. We're so busy to get out of that, and then everybody else, okay, let me give you this, but I can't put myself last anymore.
Right. That's like taking inventory of what's going on. Like,
I say.
what do I have? What do I not have? What do I need? Yeah, for sure.
So for me, I'm actually somebody that deals with 2 mental health things. One is anxiety and the other is depression, and art helps me with that. But it's still something that I have to work through. So I have a mental health provider. My therapist is really helpful. But then when I think about the other things that I need, I think about my relationships, like people that I can feel safe with. And then I think about, what is it, similar to what you said, like, what is it I need in that moment? Do I need to like really take a break? Do I need to step away from something? And so what that looks like for me sometimes is like moving my body, and I actually don't like going to the gym, but when I get there, everything is better again. Being outside when it's not freezing cold. Sometimes I go out when it's freezing cold too, but I don't. But those are like nature, art, and then also like leaning on my mental health provider when I'm really feeling anxious, because that comes up for me a lot. And then leaning on those people that I'm safe with, that I know I can go to. And oh my goodness, the most important one that we forget to do is ask for help. Okay, I am getting better at asking for help. I'm gonna give you an example. You heard me say, like, getting ready for our show. I have an art show next week, and I had to be here, but then the work had to be installed. I asked for help. She texted me, everything was good to go. And guess what? I'm not anxious now. It's handled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's real. I mean, that's a huge barrier that a lot of us, deal with, asking for help. And I think another one on top of that is saying no. Right? Like, I don't think I had the ability to say no until a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And it was my husband who had to teach me how to do it. And I had to stand in the mirror and be like,
No, that's right.
no. Yeah, it's a good exercise.
Only thing I wanted to add is just like, for any like artists in the room, have you ever like looked at like a piece for a really long time and you're working on, you're like just so frustrated and like nothing's working, and then you like step away from it for like a few hours or a few days, and you come back to it and you're like, oh, it's actually not that bad. Never mind.
This is way better than I remember it.
Yeah. Or you like see something like, oh, that's what wasn't working.
Yeah.
So like getting like distance from a project can actually be really helpful, especially if you're working on like, an independent project in your own time, some kind of passion project, and you're getting frustrated with it, or you have like this other idea that you're like, that sounds really cool, but I'm working on this thing. Just take a step back from the other thing and work on that, and then come back later. It's always good to have juggling lots. I feel good juggling lots of projects, I feel like, because I always have like something else I can go to if I'm feeling frustrated with something else. So yeah, that's all I want to add.
Yeah, no, that's great, because also stepping back,
Yes.
sometimes you can incorporate a little bit of movement in there, so you can go for a walk. You can go to the gym. You can literally cook some food, go talk to a friend or whatever. But then all of those things are allowing us to, on just a basic physical level, increase the circulation in our body, which then will increase circulation to our brain, right? And then will increase our ability to create.
Yes.
Yeah. It seems really simple, but like, I don't know, I forget it all the time.
For me, I feel like I also only recently learned to say no and to set my own boundaries and kind of be like an advocate for myself. And I'm grateful that I am now surrounded by people who kind of respect my boundaries and respect that I need my alone time, or that I can't always be a people pleaser. I feel like that was a big thing I was dealing with, was just like trying to be a people pleaser and make everyone happy, whether it was at work or like in my social life. And so yeah, now it's like just, you know, being an advocate for myself and like acknowledging what I need and making sure I like stick to the boundaries that I have set for myself to not, you know, allow burnout to happen.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, sometimes when I'm a people pleaser, when I have my moments, it leaves me with headaches. Seriously. Yeah, there's a real physical toll there. So those are some tools that you guys have honed over years, you know, of doing your art, right? But for any of us here who are maybe beginner artists or have experienced some of those barriers ourselves, but haven't actually been able to like develop any tools to be able to combat those barriers, right? What is like at least one, I would say, beginner tool that you would suggest that people in this room could walk away with and use today if they needed to?
So, I call it like a mindful minute, but it's really like 5 minutes. Put on your favorite song. It's two different ones. Put on your favorite song. Have a dance party. The other one is put on a song and just doodle to it. Doesn't matter what you make. That's it. The song acts as your timer.
Hand stretches. Put your hand out like this. And then take your other hand and then just press up on your fingers and pull back a little like that.
Yes.
You know, not too hard so it doesn't hurt, but you know that you're feeling the stretch. And then hold that for like 30 seconds. You know, you don't have to do it now, but like that's it. And then you can do the other way too. And then, yeah, this way.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And then for shoulders, because you're being drawn, you're using your whole shoulder. My professor had to like get surgery because his shoulder was messed up from drawing, from reaching across a tablet for like multiple times.
Wow.
So don't do that. So stretch your shoulders like this with your arm like that. And take your other arm out like this. Nice press this way, like backwards. And you can do it the other shoulder as well.
That's awesome.
Like that. Do that.
Great tools. Great tools.
I think I don't know. I think to just keep going. You know, maybe it's just having like a small goal in your routine every day that will encourage you to just, you know, take a small step to keep going. But also, like, you know yourself best, so you know, recognize like what you need in that moment and just like stick to that. Like, you know, if you need alone time, like, you know when you need alone time, and just trust that, I guess.
Yeah, that's big. Trust yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your needs.
What's back on me? I guess, no, you know, one thing I think I underestimate is have a journal, like a gratitude journal. I think sometimes we get so caught up, and it's been very beneficial for me in the last couple of years, especially post-COVID, just like, what's grateful? I'm ready for the world again. But helping me just at the end of the day kind of reset and think about like, what was it? And be like, oh my gosh, like I saw a little child and they smiled at me and that made me go, or, you know, just something to like get into like that one thing that you can pull from the day that made you appreciative. That is something I could say as a beginner's tool. To figure out how to be appreciative while you're struggling through something.
Yeah.
It's a real journey.
Can
That's
I
serious.
add something to that?
Yes, of course.
Because everyone's been mentioning, like, you know, finding ways to, like, express, like, inner emotions, like, through art or through journaling, is if you are a beginner artist and you have a social media account, make sure that you have art that you're making that you're not showing anyone. That's just for you. Because when you start sharing stuff and people start commenting on it, you're going to start chasing that likes, you're going to start chasing those comments, start chasing what everyone else is doing, then lose that like authenticity of the stuff that you're doing on your own. So just make sure that you have like something like a journal or a notebook, an open file of just little doodles on your iPad or whatever, just stuff just for you. That's just for you. I think it's really
I really love that. Touching upon the gratitude aspect as well, I think that it's really important for us to understand that expressing gratitude every day I think it helps us transform our mindset into operating from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, right? And when you operate from an abundance mindset, it's kind of easier to like pull from it, right? Because like it was already said, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So if you consider all of the great and fabulous parts of your life as something that you can use as a source of creativity or inspiration or like amuse even, then that really helps, especially when expressing that gratitude. So our last question, and then I'll open it up for questions from the audience, is what is your superpower and what impact do you hope to leave on the world?
I saw that question and I still don't have an answer right now, so I'm gonna hold on to it for a second. I'm gonna come back to it.
Okay, and even if it helps with putting what's your artistic superpower, that also can be a way to frame it as well.
I feel like my superpower, or at least something that I really enjoy doing, is forming community with people. When I was at Northeastern, I had led an animation club on campus for like 3 years, and it was the most fun I had while I was there, just talking with other artists about nerdy art things and being really excited with people. And I noticed that even when and at my new school now, I'm just like can't stop doing that. Like I like bringing people together over art and talking about things. So yeah, I think that's my superpower.
Awesome.
I think mine would be like vulnerability. It definitely takes a lot for me to be vulnerable with myself, even with the work I'm not sharing. So the work that I do choose to share, I hope that it, makes people who don't feel comfortable with talking about certain experiences feel less alone.
Yeah. So real.
I'm gonna just for the sake, because just that almost authentic is my energy, like my inner God. That is my superpower. That's what I tap on, and the impact that I hope to leave on the world with that is one of healing, humanity, and harmony. Like if people can just work on their own healing, and we came together as a collective and did that healing, it'd be so much more impactful than the finger pointing. You'd have more understanding and overstanding and be able to kind of expand to see like, okay, your story is your story and my story is my story. This is how we are seeing our humanity in this moment. This is how we are sharing and being harmonic with each other. We don't have to have the war against each other. So it's our own internal wars that are coming out and battling each other that makes the external combustion. So that would be what I would see happening.
That reminds me of a quote from you is own your growth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Being grown means you're owning your growth.
Because grown
right?
spells grown.
I would probably say my superpower is being dedicated, and I'll elaborate on that. It's like I'm really dedicated to this artist life and all that it is. With that being said, I came from a place where, like I said, you couldn't just be an artist, you had to also be something else. So what I would want to leave with folks is that be what you want to be and don't let anybody tell you anything differently, because there's enough abundance for you to live the life that you want to live and do what, and that's not just being a creative, like whatever it is that you want to do, you can do it if you're dedicated.
Right. There's enough space for everyone, for sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing your answers to these questions. They were a little, hard, I feel like. I don't even know how I would answer these questions, have these questions, right? But I did want to take some time in the next 5 minutes to open up to any questions that the audience may have. Yes?
Okay, I have many mental notes of things. I think especially thinking about people who have Instagram and going back to their original, because the other week I was like, let me delete all these photos. But now I'm like, actually, it may help somebody to be like, this was her first photo, and now here is her million. But I really wanted to know from each of you, actually, but I wanted to know from each of you, like, what was your first or maybe fondest memory of your, like I don't know, your like happiest achievement in your like solo independent artistry? Either first or fondest memory.
I don't really have like, I think about when I was a kid and I got in trouble for it, but it still was like the dopest thing I did. I drew like all my favorite Disney characters on a pair of jeans with Crayola washable markers. So like it only lived literally until it got to the wash machine. But like I still remember that and think like I should really recreate those again. Yeah.
That sounds dope.
A fond memory I have, I did theater, played, like been in plays, but my uncle was the first person to put me in anything. And so it was called Allegations. And I remember being in Cambridge, CCTV, like 8 years old. I could still, Cindy, I want ice cream. No, please. I said no, but I'm hungry. That's your problem, darling. You always hungry. So I want to go home. You will. Now, you just going to have to wait, little girl, because I ain't going nowhere till Lewis gets here. You understand? I said, do you understand? When we get home, telling mama you've been mean to me. It's just my uncle. Like that I didn't even understand how it would impact me, but I still remember my lines from doing that part.
From when you were 8 years
So
old.
8 years old.
I don't know. The thing that's just coming to my mind right now is that when I was like in 6th grade, I used to like get like a really big sheet of paper and put it in front of my friends, and we'd like draw like our little characters on them, and then we make them battle each other. And we just draw like, you know, lasers and like dinosaurs and like just all this stuff happening on it, and it'd be this big mess by the end of it. It was such a collaborative experience. I remember that very well.
Paper battlefield. I love it.
I also don't really know, but the memory that is coming to my head is when I was in middle school, and I had just moved to a new school, and I was taking art class, and I remember my teacher was just like, met with me after class and then gave me like a watercolor set, was just like, just keep doing art. And that was like the first time I was like, oh, like maybe I'll like actually start doing art more, because I always enjoyed it, I always doodled, I always like just did art for fun. But then only then I was just like, yeah, like this is, it made me feel like great, you know, to keep and encouraged to keep doing art, I guess.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
I just have a question. Like, it was mentioned about boundaries earlier, but how do you, or even if you have a mechanism of setting boundaries within yourself? Because art is one that's given of yourself. All of you, or at least a few of you, make money from art, which is once again given of yourself. But then there's stuff that's like, this is just mine. So how do you set those boundaries where it's like, you could possibly have $1 million idea, but you're like, no, but this is me. Like nobody but my close friends get to see it. So I was just curious about that, if you have things in place for that.
That's a good question.
Jesus. That's a good question. I'm an energy person. And so I believe, like, and I really do try to rely heavily on my spirit to be like, okay, is this something that I'm feeling embarrassed about? It's like getting clear on it. If it's my ego that's doing, let me put this aside, or is it like, nah, this is something spiritually, like it's time and place for everything. So spirit could be like, yeah, put that aside for now, because we're gonna come back to that a little bit later. So you're gonna do these other things. But just really getting clarified if it's my ego that's like kind of putting up a barrier or a fear, like, okay, I don't want to share this, I don't want to do that, I don't want people to know me like this, I don't want to have to say that. And usually what probably will happen is, well, that's what you need to go do and share. And so I'll feel in the spirit like, nah, you have to do that. Like Hella Black was, you have to do that. I'm gonna send you one more sign. If you ignore me, look. And I'm like, all right. And then you do it and you're like, oh, okay. I had a limited boundary. Like that boundary was actually limiting me from taking a chance or taking a risk, as opposed to being like, you know what, is this the time of the season for it? And if not, it's cool. If it happens to be, then somewhere down the line on these amazing collector shows, when my nieces go through my amazing stuff and they find this amazing person, they're gonna be like, oh my goodness, she was the greatest and this is worth $1 million. And then it'd be like, Fund your college career.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have a good answer for it, but yeah, very similarly, it's just like you kind of will feel when something is right to share. One of my art friends is like the super prolific comic artist and storyboarder, and she said that she does not share comics that are about her life until she's fully processed those emotions. And that can take a long time too. And I was just thinking about that because sometimes some of my recent books have been about like things that are really personal to me and personal in my life. And I was like, but I had to like process those emotions first before sharing those things. So it's just, I don't know, you have to feel it when it's right, I think. Yeah.
I think adding to that, a lot of my stuff is also very personal, and sometimes it also takes a while for me to finish something because it is me processing something that has happened. And so I think I just hold on to it, and if it gets shared, it gets shared, but I just hold on to it until I feel like I'm comfortable to share it or not share it. Not sure.
Recently, I've had this idea where I've been slowly creating work that I call myself trying to tell like my story. So I recently created like 2 pieces about my children. So they're portraits of my children, and I share them on the internet. But they're at home. Like I haven't brought them outside to show anybody. Like they're in my living room, like tucked away so they don't get bumped or anything. Especially when you have kids because they break your artwork sometimes. So yeah, I like those kind of notes real.
It is real. I felt that.
So I kind of put those things aside for a later day. Maybe they'll be in a show one day. I don't know if people want to see them, but you know,
Yeah. So those are all great responses. Thank you so much for sharing that. I also think that I'm seeing a theme of it takes time, right? You have to understand who you are, take that inventory, and there's going to be a lot of trial and error there trial and error there when it comes to your art, right? So sometimes you can share something and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of myself and this feels so great. And then other moments you can share something and look back on it and you're like, oh God, like, why did I even make that? Like, you know, so it's really that trial and error, you know, figuring out what works for you. But we are out of time today, and that was our last question. And I want to thank everyone for showing up, just being here at Comics and Color Festival in general. Thank you. We are making history, right? This is the only festival that uplifts voices of color. So, you know, next year will be our 5th annual festival. And again, we have Zahirah Nora Truth, we have TiElla Grimes, we got Gabriel Reid, and we have Bithiah Holton. So thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah. And I'm Caiana Luse Moise.